I don't normally look at the news anymore, but I was doing research about the Irish abortion referendum, and I'm going to make a video about that too, and probably post this one at the same time. But when I was coming across it, I saw that the American author Philip Roth had died, and he was being eulogized in The Guardian by a fellow named Howard Jacobson. And Howard Jacobson is a British Jew, and he thinks that Philip Roth was truly amazing and feels some kinship with Philip Roth because they're both Jews in their separate country, and apparently both wrote mainly about Jews. Philip Roth's most famous novel, which is Portnoy's Complaint, which I can summarize for you based on something from its Wikipedia page here. The main character, Portnoy, is a lust-ridden, mother-addicted Jewish bachelor. The title is taken from a manual on sexual dysfunction. A lot of the book centers on extreme sexual longings, often of a perverse nature. Sexual revolution issues, a lot of stuff about masturbation, quote unquote, candid and explicit treatment of sexuality. So this book was heavily censored and restricted in the Anglo countries when it was released, basically because it was completely at odds with white Anglo culture. Nobody in my family, when I was growing up, ever would have talked this way. Now it's become very common. Howard Jacobson can tell us why it's become common. Let me read briefly from his eulogy here. It's for the art, then, that we should be grieving today. Roth's death marks the end of a remarkably rich period of American fiction. I nearly said American Jewish fiction, but the distinction is redundant. In the period now closing, American fiction was Jewish fiction. Roth, Bellow, Malamud, Heller, Mailer. For a host of reasons, their American immigrant experience of isolation and self-betterment became the creative drive of America. Bliss was it in that dawn to be alive, but to be Jewish was very heaven. If we won't see such a constellation again, it is not because the stars won't shine so brightly, but because we have stopped looking. So this is typical of, in my opinion, typical of the Jewish experience in the West. Jews can't help but talk about themselves, and they can't help but elevate their own experience as outsiders to the heights. So they kind of feel like whatever they're experiencing is the greatest, the best, the most extreme. They think that their joys are the greatest joys and that their sorrows are the greatest sorrows. And you can make an argument saying that all peoples feel this way, but the difference is that the Jews go around telling everyone that they feel this way. And because of the Jews' involvement in media and because of their large amount of influence in the arts, they are the ones who get these kind of eulogies printed. And this wouldn't happen for example, I'm an American Southerner, right? So I would not be in Australia, let's say, writing a piece about how American Southerners in Australia and American Southerners in the South and American Southerners in Canada all have something in common. Because my people only belong to one specific area. We don't have a worldwide diaspora that's linked through culture, language, genetics, religious practices, and all these other things that put us under one thing. And we don't control media, newspapers, and television, and all these other things in order to propagate our ideas. So I find it very strange that books about masturbation and sexual degeneracy, which is basically what Portnoy's complaint is. And there's a lot of that same kind of stuff in Norman Mailer and things like that too, that is actually said to be the greatest, the highest, the most ascended creative instinct. What's actually happened in America is that these trends have become extremely prominent, and they're now spread amongst everybody. So when I look at young Americans today, I do see that they have internalized the kind of viewpoint that was being put forward in Portnoy's complaint. That wasn't the way I grew up. That wasn't the way my parents grew up. That wasn't the way my grandparents grew up. So it does seem as though the Jewish experience has left indelible marks on American culture, and therefore the culture of the rest of the world too, as American culture propagates. So it'll be up to you and all of us to decide whether this has been a good thing or a bad thing, but it's kind of hard to disagree with the essential argument of Howard Jacobson in this eulogy for Philip Roth, because in the 20th century in America, it seems like it really was the Jewish century. Thank you for your time.